did you have many dealings with David Murray? And if so, how did you find him?
I did. David, as you know, as well as me, certainly better than me, is an amazing character. I'm not one of these people who are now going to say, oh, look what he did, hubris and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, but, I guess it is a function of, being 55 now. You look at life and you look at people that achieve and they're almost always flawed in some ways. David was a pirate. David was somebody who lost his legs and didn't feel sorry for himself and pushed on. He bent rules. He wasn't going to be shackled by things that the football was about in those days. I really liked him. There was an entertainment factor when you were with him that Fergus didn't have. I think that's one of the really interesting things, that if you look at those two people, now history would say one was great and one wasn't, but I don't see it like that. I see them as two both very successful men who went about life in a different way. One of my stories with David is that, and I think this is the most telling one. I had always this awful problem, Graham, of trying to get 11-1 on anything I wanted to do. So I spent most of my life in the SPL basically lobbying one or the other to give me their vote, because the other 10 followed me very.
Because it was like Rangers and Celtic together, 2 votes could block anything.
That was how
they?
the SPL was set up. It was a veto they had between them, and that was one of the deals that Fergus had insisted on. So I always had 10, and to answer the previous question again with that, knowing that 10 really successful men of real gravitas would trust me and would follow me and would give me their vote almost without me even having to ask, was something that made the press comment seem to me irrelevant. But I needed one of the other two, and Celtic played an incredibly hard game. Eric Riley, the finance director, was the attack dog of Fergus, and a really good man, and he played his professional hand very, very well, but he wasn't for budging. So I had to go to Charlotte Square and play a different game with David and his game. I remember once we were trying to do a deal for 6 SPL games that we're trying to sell to the BBC, and it was an important deal for us. I felt it was very important that we had terrestrial coverage. Celtic said the values weren't high enough. And I went to David. I said, look, David, you've just bought Moles, you've just bought Gascoigne, whatever it was. You're playing a huge game. You're in Monte Carlo. You've beaten them. You're in the semi-final of the Champions League. Are you going to break my balls on not giving me a vote? You're bigger than this, David. And that's just appealing to David's character. And he lifted the phone to Celtic. While I was in the room, he says, I'm giving the boy his vote. It's done. And that was it. And that was my job for 4 years. I had to manage interpersonally, basically Celtic or Rangers, to try and get them to do stuff that I wanted done. People don't see that underneath the water, but that was the main part of my job. And, David Murray, in the main, was somebody that I have got a weakness for flawed people that want to achieve. And you will never see a quote from me saying, oh, look what he did. He took this down. He took that down. Look how he left them. Everything about green and white and all of that is his fault. I think he did. He was a great character for his time.
It's interesting, Roger, because my relationship with David Murray, my journey with David Murray was a little bit similar to you, and it coincided with yours. I mean, I saw a lot of the good things in him. I saw a lot of the appealing things in David Murray, and I saw a lot of his obvious flaws. But just on this, from about 2001, Rangers began to embroil themselves in their EBTs shenanigans. Did you know any of them? Did you know any of this?
None.
Did they affect? Do you ever remember somebody at the SPL saying, "What is this?
No.
What's going on here?" Right.
Nothing. I mean, if you remember the context of those times, around about 2000, we were in the middle of a dot-com boom. We were in the middle of people like NTL, ITV Digital bidding huge money for TV rights. I went to the clubs and I said, we need to ride this wave. Let's get our renewal done immediately. We started that. We got ideas of what the value would be, which would have been about 60 million a year. And what that then started, and this probably was my mistake by putting that amount of money on the table, was a huge internal fight about how that money would be split. So every conversation between middle of 2002 until the famous May of 2000 until the famous May of 2002, when they voted against SPL TV, was every day going around the 10 clubs trying to find a compromise about how these monies would be split. And it became very, very bitter. You know, even well before when they voted down SPL TV, there was a lot of calls of saying, well, you know, if you're not going to do this, go and play somewhere else. Yes, you generate most of the value, but, you know, you're going to play yourself every week. And we had a lot of strong personalities at the SPL at that time. Robinson, Stuart Milne, Rod Petrie, John Boyle, Jeff Brown. I mean, there were men of real gravitas. They weren't going to be bullied. And Celtic and Rangers were trying to bully them. And EBTs just wasn't on the horizon.
No, yeah.
And like, it didn't happen. So let's assume it did happen. Rangers are buying players that I don't think they can afford. What do you think about that? Right, okay, since I'm a bit of a Boy Scout and some of these things, I'd probably have looked at it, Graham. But then I would have thought, shit, you know, that's great marketing for us. They're bringing in players that are helping Scottish football. They're going to bust themselves because they can't afford it. Not my problem. It never happened, but I'm not sure I wouldn't take that line anyway. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.